Donut?
No thanks. Do you have any
different formats?
It says purple stuff inside. Purple is a
different format.
Hey everybody, it's Tyler the Fro, and this is the first of our double feature Beelzemon Cup deck lists. I just got back from my first Beelzemon Cup. As you can see, I took Beelzemon, obviously. I wanted to try as many of the new starter deck cards as I could, because for this one we were allowed to use the starter deck. So as you can see, we've got the new Impmon, the new Beelzemon, the new Beelzemon, the new Blast Mode, the new Iron Mako, Witchmon, and Rivals Barrage. The ratios I was working with, I would absolutely do over because I did not exactly have the best time today. I was anticipating a lot of Minervamon, a lot of Bagra Army, because those are really cheap mono purple decks that you can just kind of pick up and play. So I was running like Psychmon instead of, like, say, Gazamon, and let me tell you, that was absolutely the wrong call. Out of the 16 players, there was one Beelzemon player whose friend traded him the full set of Rivals Barrage to make that deck actually possible. There was one Minervamon player in the entire room, and there were 14 Beelzemon decks, so I faced pretty much nothing but mirror matches all day. And man, let me tell you, this configuration was not good for the mirror match. Like, case in point, Psychmon does nothing. Pagumon was an absolute liability. It cost me more games than it was really accelerating. This is a really good card for the early game, but so many of these games were going back and forth, going extra long, so this thing ended up actually killing me in a couple times because of the mandatory on deletion just milled out my last two cards, and I just died. The Beelzemon, wasn't super happy about it in a Beelzemon shell, but I kind of want to try it out for the next event that I'm playing tomorrow, because there are a lot of instances where when I had an opportunity to play Beelzemon for one memory, I didn't also have a way to mill myself that turn and fire off an Impmon out of my trash. So this card is definitely part of the 8 Beelzemon deck that I'm going to be piloting for a while, but I was finding that in this particular shell it wasn't really doing as much as it could have. That being said, I'd probably replace these with 2 copies of the BT2 Beelzemon, because I was finding that I often had an Impmon in play but no way to get into the level 6 to get into the level 7. So if I put those 2 Beelzemon back in, then I can just play any of my Impmons and go immediately into that. This Beelzemon absolutely pulled its weight. There's a reason why this deck is built around it. So on Digivolve, you trash the top 4 cards of your deck. Then on all turns, once per turn, when a card is trashed from your deck, you gain 1 memory for every 10 cards in your trash. So often you're Digivolving for like 2 memory total, sometimes free. And then once per turn, when a card is trashed from your deck, it gains security attack +1 for the turn. What's unique about that is that security attack +1 carries over for when you Digivolve into your Blast Mode. So going forward, I would probably trade the ratios on this one. I would definitely keep 1 copy of this in the deck, because it's able to pick off multiple level 6s at the same time. But the combo move of give this security attack +1 and then immediately go into this Blast Mode to gain 3 memory, unsuspend. You can technically do like up to 4 checks with this thing. In order to get this Blast Mode up to that kind of security attack, you would need to have like 10 or less cards left in your deck, and that's incredibly risky. This Witchmon actually is something I'm going to be continuing with the deck. It was extra powerful because, like, for only 2 memory, you trash 3 cards. It's a really good enabler. The inheritable effect was also fairly relevant, giving that extra 2k on my turn. Also, it's statted pretty well, like 5k for 5 memory. It's on par with the original Wizardmon. So at worst, it's just like a big beefy attacker. The Skull Satamon, if I'm leaning heavier into the Witchmon package, that Skull Satamon could very easily be either of the Balmon. I think the new Balmon is probably going to be a little bit better, because it also acts as a deterrent for getting rid of your stack, which a lot of these like big stack decks tend to lack. I think for the Beelzemon Cup tomorrow, I'm going to a different store, so it's a very Mervamon heavy area, so I think the 1 Death X is going to be really potent there. As well, this Iron Mako is actually better than I was expecting. I thought it was just going to be like, oh, you dig 4 cards down, whatever. This effect here, when one of your Digimon digivolves into a purple Digimon, by suspending this tamer and putting 1 card from your hand on top of your deck, you gain a memory. So because so many of your cards have a digivolving mill trigger, you're able to set it up so that you can grab an Impmon out of your trash, or pop an opposing Digimon, or gain a memory. It's actually surprisingly powerful there. So I definitely want to keep testing out the 2-2 split, because I don't want to get rid of this entirely. I like having the option of turning any Beelzemon into a blast mode out of my trash for only 3 memory. So I don't want to get rid of that effect. Lastly, one thing I wanted to test out was Rival's Barrage. This card is insanely powerful. So this is always doing something no matter where you're seeing it. If it's in your hand or in your security stack, it deletes your opponent's highest level Digimon. So you can get rid of level 7s, so it's a little bit better than Flybolt in that regard. If you mill it, it essentially acts as another copy of Doberman, because it grabs a purple Digimon or Tamer from your trash and puts it back in your hand. So you can just kind of have it sit there, and then, oh, you're about to pop off. You just sack this, grab whatever piece you need out of your trash, put it into your hand, and then you start comboing off with your Beelzemons. So I think if I'm going to continue with this deck, the Pagumon I wanted for that early acceleration, I'm definitely going to get rid of that. I'm going to try out the new Yamon from the starter deck, because it's a little bit more tailored to this kind of strategy. Although if I'm finding that it's milling a little too aggressively, I may try the BT2 Pagumon, because it's essentially the same thing. It only mills 1 card when it's attacking, so you can be a little bit more reserved when you're going for it. Psychmon, even though I'm going into a Mervamon heavy metagame tomorrow, I'm still probably going to get rid of that for a Gazamon. There was a lot of these mirror matches where both sides were gaining like 3, 4, 5, 6 memory in 1 turn, so I think having Gazamon there, even though there's so many things that just incidentally kill it, just having it sit there for 1 turn, it should be enough to kind of swing a tempo in my favor. So that is the first deck that I tried for the double feature. So now we're going to be throwing it over to me in the future, who will hopefully have better results with a better list now that I know how the format's going to be playing out. Over to you, me. Thanks, me. So suffice to say that the second event went considerably better by virtue of the fact that I was able to get a hold of a second copy of the starter deck. So I had full copies of the new Impmon, the Rival's Barrage. These were huge differences between the first event. I took what I learned from the first event and switched up my Pagumons. So these are the BT2 on attacking ones. I was finding that I was decking myself out too much, so this one gives me a little bit more control over when I'm milling myself. To counterbalance that, I went up to a full 4 copies of the Witchmon, because this thing is absolutely insane when comboed with Iron Mako, because you're able to Digivolve, draw a card, and then activate the Iron Mako before you resolve the mill 3 cards. So you're able to put anything from, like, say, a Beelzemon to an Impmon to a Deathslinger or a Wizardmon to gain memory. You're able to put those back on top of your deck, gain a memory. Basically, this Digivolves for 1, and then you mill 3 cards, and you get whatever free effect you want. For the same reason, I tried the Balmon over the Skull Satamon. This one, it's just a huge deterrent for your opponent. It usually just sits there for a turn and just kind of dares them to destroy it. 9 times out of 10 they're not going to bother, so it essentially guarantees that as long as you have a Beelzemon in your hand the following turn, you're able to Digivolve and get your chain going. This time for the event, I also ended up cutting back on some of the Dobermons because I have access to 4 copies of the Rival's Barrage. It's essentially the same thing, except this one, it kind of hinges on being deleted, which I was noticing that a lot of people were playing the Iron Makos and more of these like miss memory boosts and like the full package of Impmon, so this thing wasn't dying as frequently. So I'd much rather just have like the 1 copy so it acts as like a 5th Rival's Barrage. I also ended up teching in some of my level 6s, so I went with the old BT2 Warp Beelzemon, because I was finding I always had an Impmon in play, but sometimes I just needed to go directly into a level 6 without having to worry about building up a chain. So just having like the one copy, super important. And for the mirror matches, because everything was a mirror match that day, I put in one Creepymon over the Beelstar. It didn't really do too much. It was very good for just grabbing a Balmon out of my trash. I didn't really get a chance to deck anybody out, but sometimes milling 4 to 6 cards, or due to the nature of the deck, it gives you a ton of things to do as part of resolving those 6 mills. It's very good for getting you over that 20 card threshold. That's super important for, like, say, your Impmons or your Beelzemons or your Blast Modes. Having access to 4 copies of Rivals Barrage was a game changer. This was kind of the make or break on the Sunday event, and having access to this card in your delay zone, being able to grab any card out of your trash was really flexible. It gave me a lot of end game potential. It also allowed me to cut the old Iron Makos, which were mostly there to digivolve a Beelzemon Blast Mode out of my trash. Now I could just pop a Rivals Barrage, grab the Blast Mode, and then just digivolve over. Which in turn also allows me to change up the Blast Mode that I'm using. So with the starter deck one, you unsuspend the Digimon, and then if you have 20 or more cards in your trash, you gain 3 memory. So with Iron Mako, it's essentially digivolving for free. And on top of that, you get to set up these combo plays of swinging in with Impmon, digivolving into Beelzemon, gaining 2 or more memory, gaining security attack +1, and then you digivolve over with the Blast Mode, you unsuspend it, gain 3 more memory, and then it still keeps the security attack +1 because this Digimon gained it. So you can potentially do 4 checks out of nowhere for like pretty much no memory. I ended up going 3-1 over the course of the event, losing only to a mirror match where he was able to get to the 20 card threshold in his trash, whereas I got stuck on 19. It basically boiled down to he had a Balmon in play, and I had a suspended Beelzemon, and my options were to either play an Impmon and set my opponent to 2, or go up into the Blast Mode just to unsuspend it so they couldn't digivolve into a Beelzemon and to go over him, and it would pretty much wipe my board. So I decided to play it safe and go up into the Blast Mode. And unfortunately it didn't matter because he had so many cards in his trash that he was able to go into this Beelzemon, get 2 checks in, and then do the Blast Mode combo, which I was kind of hoping to set up the next turn. So that one I took to 3 games, but unfortunately that was a round 2 loss, which means I was basically out of contention for the winner Beelzemon. However, 3-1 still got me another copy of the starter deck, so pretty stoked about that one. Gives me another shot at getting that super sweet fancy Beelzemon. But as far as the rest of my matchups go, round 1 I beat Beelzemon, just kind of ran over them. While they were still setting up their trash, I was able to assemble the Beelzemon Blast Mode combo. These guys were working overtime because I was able to set up turns where I would just evolve into the Witchmon, set up the mill, stack an Impmon on top of my deck, and I got to the 20 cards way before he was able to get any of his Beelzemons out for free. Round 2, that's when I lost to the Beelzemon Mirror. Round 3, I played another mirror match, except this time I was the one who was able to set up the 20 cards in my trash before he could, and it really showed off that in the mirror match you have to be as aggressive as possible with your milling. You have to hit that 20 card threshold before your opponent, and then you kind of pump the brakes a little bit because that way you don't end up decking yourself out. The final round was also against another mirror match, but I got paired down, so he just conceded to me. He was also pretty much just sick of playing mirror matches all day, so that's totally fair. Going forward, because this deck is technically Ultimate Cup legal, I would make a couple changes to the composition if I was going to run this for an Ultimate Cup. Namely, the missed memory boosts, I would probably cut those for 2 of the BT10 Balmon. I was finding that aside from triggering insecurity, if this was in my hand, if I had to hard play this, I was basically going to lose anyway. Milling 2 cards isn't as powerful as it used to be because I have so many ways of milling 3 cards at a time. And I have so much extra memory gain in this deck now that the mismemory boost isn't really going to do too much. Whereas if I swap those out for some more level 5s like the Balmons, it makes it a little bit easier to assemble the chain of like Impmon, Witchmon, Balmon, Beelzemon. Because I was also finding a lot of times where I didn't have a Beelzemon in my trash, but I had the Balmon active. So rather than risk that, I would much rather have access to more copies of the Balmon, so just in case I need to build that chain up manually. As well, the Creepymon, because I'm not facing Beelzemon mirrors all day, I can definitely cut that. I'm thinking either the slot goes to a second copy of the Warp Beelzemon or a one of for the new Beelstar. It pretty much boils down to whether I want to consistently warp into a level 6 to set up the blast mode, or if I want to have a little bit more end game rush, just to kind of close out a game. Like, it very well could also just be a Ginkaku promote or a purple hybrid. But I like having access to the one of Beelstar just because if I hit 30 cards in my trash, I can play the Beelstar for 1, mill myself 1 card, grab this Impmon because it's a 4 of now, so I pretty much guaranteed to see at least 1 copy. This thing rushes in, immediately goes up into this Beelzemon. I'm going to gain 3 memory, so it's a free Digivolution, 2 checks. Then I can pop, say, a Rival's Barrage, or if I already have it in my hand, I can grab the Blast Mode. I can Digivolve into the Blast Mode for 4 memory, gain 3 memory, so I've spent 2 memory total so far in this sequence, and then I get 2 more checks all out of nowhere. So generally speaking, I like where this deck is going. It's absolutely a very serious contender going forward. I'm absolutely going to be playing a combination of this and the new Beelzemon in like separate decks. They play very similarly, but this one I like having for the potential combo kills. And there's a lot to be said with just the incidental inherited effects of Impmon, Witchmon, Balmon. There's some times where your Beelzemon, which is normally on the smaller end of level 6s, like 11k, 12k is pretty puny compared to something like, say, Black War Greymon. Having all of these inheritable effects that pump it up by like 3k, 2k, 2k. I was swinging in with a blast mode at 21,000 DP. So it might as well just read, this has jamming. Like, blue no longer has the monopoly. Like, you stack it up, so it's like, okay, so I've got an Impmon, a Witchmon, Balmon, and then, say, Beelzemon, this one. That's 2 checks coming in at 19,000 DP. As far as I'm aware, there's nothing in the game that has that level of DP that triggers in your security. So it's gonna live any combat, and that's just ridiculous. And people really aren't running too many removal options. Like, before, earlier Beelzemon lists were running like 4 copies of Death Slinger at most. Now we've got 8 copies, but other decks haven't really adapted to that. They're trying to kill off your attackers through sheer size, and now we have a way to kind of bypass that. So yeah, I absolutely recommend grabbing 2 copies of the starter deck. These cards are obscene. If you have the opportunity to play an Ultimate Cup with these kinds of cards, I wholeheartedly recommend playing it. I'm absolutely going to be jamming more and more games with this because I fell in love with this deck over the weekend, and I hope you guys had similar success over your Beelzemon Cup weekends. And this has been Tyler the Fro. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that bell, do all that YouTube stuff, and you have yourselves a great day.